Now let's talk about why things are the way they are in terms of our electoral process, why we get the same results that we've been getting, why we seem kind of stuck. And essentially what is behind all of this is the duopoly. We're actually defining the duopoly and explaining what it is. What is this mechanism that has us captured as a country electorally? Why? Despite all the rhetoric, ultimately, it almost seems like it doesn't necessarily matter who's in power. That's not an absolute statement. Obviously, there are some differences, but a ton of Americans, if they didn't have access to any political information at all whatsoever, no news media, no nothing, they would not know when we have a change of the guards. So when we go from a Democrat in the White House to a Republican in the White House, millions and millions of Americans would not even notice the difference, right? Let's explain why that is the way it is and why things continue to kind of stay on a similar trajectory and why we don't have this sort of more improvements and why there's a disconnect between what the people want and what they're getting. People, we have certain things that have high popularity. A lot of people want certain things. And you contrast that with what Congress actually focuses on and passes, and there's a huge divide. And I want to explain why that is. So we're going to break the whole thing down. The Democrats versus the Republicans, their branding, their tactics, a key strategy that makes our elections irrelevant to a lot of these Republicans and Democrats, right? The truth about what happens in our elections when a Democrat wins versus a Republican win. I'm going to expose the realities of what it actually means. So, first of all, let's talk about branding. Who is it that the Democrats say they are? Who is it that the Republicans say they are? What is their message to their base? So the Democrats, they wear a lot of different hats, but I think fundamentally they play the good guys, right? That's the image that they want to present themselves as. That is the message that they want to put out to their base. We are the adults in the room. We care about you. We care about norms. So a lot of this is really establishment. This keep ironically, there's a conservative flair to a lot of this message because norms, right? Conservatism, a lot of it is really preserving the norms. Now, in practice, that's not really what happens in this country, but fundamentally, you think about the concept of Republicans, you want to maintain the norms. Back in the day, this kind of stuff was not allowed, right? Women, behaved a certain way, certain conduct was not accepted. You were able to, or really discipline your kid. They want to keep things the way they are. But ironically, that is the core message. The core Democrat message is really a conservative one when you think about it, right? Now, the message that the Democrats put up there, their branding versus who they actually are, huge divide, right? In my view, the reality is the Democrats are the opposite side of the same dirty coin, right? And they operate sort of in tandem. There's sort of a synergy between the two parties where, like Pelosi admitted herself, she says that we need a good GOP, right? I don't think good is the real word, right? But, underneath what she's saying, the model that keeps the Democrats in power requires the GOP participation in terms of the way that they participate in this system. So let's talk about that. What is the GOP branding? Who are the Republicans? Republicans are the crusaders, right? They are the crusaders. We will save you. We will fight for you. They are evil, right? There's definitely a lot of fear-mongering. I think the Republicans try to, now obviously the Democrats do fear-mongering as well, but I think the GOP is far more effective. Their propaganda machine is far more effective. You look at the top right-wing channels, they are just absolutely demolishing anything that the left or the liberals. There's a spectrum, right? You have sort of centrists, you got the liberals, and you got the left and far left. But this general group, their media machine is very, very limited. The biggest components are going to be establishment, CNN, MSNBC, mainstream media, and then you have the independent media, which is, really, really, they're in comparison to the right wing, right? Look at Steven Crowder, look at Ben Shapiro. These are multi-million subscriber channels. They're getting a lot of views. I think Steven Crowder can do a live stream with like 40,000 people watching, and they have the acceptance of mainstream media. So somebody like a Stephen Crowder. Many of them actually used to be on mainstream media, right? Stephen Crowder, Ben Shapiro, these guys were like contributors for Fox News, the largest mainstream media network. Whereas on the left or more liberal side, independent media is sort of ostracized. Those guys, in their little, they don't know how things work, and they think, this is magic and this and that, and all they're doing is helping Trump. You know what I mean? So you're ostracized as an independent, in the left, right wing media. There's an embrace. You have sometimes there's a conflict, like Ben Shapiro calling out Fox News based on I think something with trans something or whatever. But generally speaking, they operate in synergy. So the point is that the Republicans have a lot more power to really push this message of Crusader. And what is the message? The message is, I think, they present an apocalyptic present, right? Which can get far worse. Like, we are already living in the apocalypse, right? The Democrats want to abort babies after birth. They want to mutilate kids. What else? They want to shut you up and take away your freedom of speech. They're coming after you. Conservative. They're coming after you, and you got these immigrants flooding in the country, and they're poisoning the blood and all this kind of stuff, right? It's insanity, right? That's happening right now, and we are going to save you. You need to vote for us so we can save you from all this insanity. The Democrats are communists, and like, they're just over the top. It's just fair. But again, I think one of the things why this is very effective, not just the propaganda machine, but also the fact that they present it as a current apocalypse. The Dem fear mongering is really an extrapolation. It's a theoretical, right? If you don't vote for us, you're going to get these guys, and these guys are going to turn us into a democracy. Into a dictatorship. So we got to save democracy. They're going to end democracy. If Trump wins another election, it's going to be the last election. Now, I'm not trying to put whitewash that and act as if there isn't actual real threats in what they're talking about. But we're not talking about whether these threats are real or not. I'm just going into what the strategies are, right? So regardless of whether you think democracy is at risk or not, what I'm pointing out to you is this is the key Democratic strategy. The Dem strategy is to talk about the theoretical, apocalypse. When the GOP is talking about an active apocalypse, they're actively coming after your kids now, right? They're destroying the norms. They're turning this country whatever. You know what I mean? Like, it's happening now. And then also there's a stronger emotional impact because you're talking about the kids. They're coming after your kids. I mean, that's triggering a primal instinct of like, we gotta protect our kids, right? What do the Dems have? I mean, it's like, okay, in theory, if Trump wins, theoretically, be the end of democracy. It's kind of like, okay, is it really going to happen? Obviously, there's a certain demographic that are going to respond actively to that, but I think this is a much more powerful message to get people afraid. And this is why, to me, you can get a consistent GOP turnout versus the Dems. You got to give them something to look forward to. We're going to forgive your student loans. We're going to, do whatever it is. Like, we're going to do something. But with the GOP, all this constant fear mongering, which is across the board, from mainstream media on the right to the independent, everyone's telling you, and they got their conferences going, and all these guys on social media every day, the radical talk. So to me, that's the dynamic between the two parties. So let's talk about how this works and how this translates to wins. So if I'm a Republican politician, right, all I need to do is latch on to whatever current culture war there is, find the most extreme examples of the most extreme examples of whatever the culture war thing is, right? So we're talking about gender affirming care or something. If there's one story, right? I'm not saying it's literally just like one story. I mean, the point is, all you need is one story of something. This could be it could literally be the only time this has ever happened. There was some situation where there was a hospital and somebody had a baby, and the baby was born, and then the doctor secretly went and like, let's just say, disposed of the baby, right? That was already born, and they covered it up or something like that. All you got to do as a right-wing influencer, you latch onto this and you just launch that into the right-wing propaganda machine, and you keep talking about it. Everyone else is going to jump on board. Fox is going to jump on, all the other right-wing channels. They're all going to be talking about this. Oh, they did this thing with the baby, and the people listening are just going to be like, oh my goodness, right? We got to do something, right? And that keeps the energy. So you just got to keep talking about this stuff. They're coming after our kids, and the communists this, and they don't care about it. They hate our country, and just keep demonizing, the Democrats, and, presenting them the most extreme, basically, you focus on a caricature of the Democrats, right? Some left-winger said something really, really bizarre. I mean, it could have been a random nobody group of 20 people that nobody knows, right? But somebody in the group says something crazy like, we should put all the Republicans in camps or something, grab onto that, like all the right wing guys posting, and just keep your base just so afraid, so afraid. As long as you can keep the base more afraid of the alternative, then you don't have to really do much. That's how the GOP, the politicians, they can get elected and not really have to do any real work at all, right? Because it's kind of like, and you could be as corrupt as you want. Like, oh, I'm really corrupt. I'm part of big pharma or whatever thing that right wingers claim to be concerned about. You can violate all that stuff, right? Because none of that matters if you can keep your base more afraid of the alternative, right? Because when it comes to election, they have a choice, right? Either you are going to vote for the GOP, right? Or you're going to allow the Democrats to win. And if the equation of the Democrats in power is more terrifying than whatever you're doing, then they're going to vote for you, right? Because think about it. If a conservative has an option to vote for a politician that they know is very corrupt, they know is a very bad person, right? Or vote for, or allow a party to come into power that they think is going to destroy the country, and, blah, 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 and whatever they feel here is far more, aggressive or concerning than this guy. It's kind of like they're going to vote for this guy. I don't like this guy. He's corrupt. He's establishment. I'm anti-establishment. But this. Oh my goodness, right? So as long as you keep the message strong that this is so bad, you can keep people on your side. The Democrats now. So this strategy that the Republicans use all the time is beneficial to the Democrats, right? Because now what they can do is all you have to do is do crumbs, right? Just do a little something here and there. You just need to have some wins, right? I mean, the main thing is you have to really have this solid branding of the good guys. So, you guys are all about norms and we have to be nice is not the word I'm looking for, but we have to have civil. We got to be civil and be respectful and we the people of the United States of America. You know what I mean? Like you can't have this Donald Trump cursing and oh my goodness, like we're above that, right? So as long as you keep that tie and everything all buttoned up, you know what I mean? Then your voters are looking at, okay, we got these guys who are like the good guys, the normal guys, and then we got these guys, communism and this and that and all the craziness, and it's kind of like, okay, like that, I'm gonna vote for the Democrats. So the crazier the Republicans are, the more power the Democrats have and the ability that they have to not really deliver on much. The GOP doesn't have to deliver on much because they present these guys as, they're so crazy. And the Democrats are using a similar strategy, the duopoly, right? Two sides of the same dirty coin, right? They're both scamming the people with this kind of fear-mongering, lesser of two evils nonsense. But here's a core part of the strategy that I think people need to understand, right? What happens in elections? Totally forgot to discuss the primary process on the Republican side. In the primary, what you want to do is you want to tap into the extremists on your side, right? Whether it's white supremacists or just far right folks, the more extreme the better. The idea is these are the people that are most engaged, the people that you can get to do a lot, right? They'll go out there and campaign for you. They're wearing your hat, your MAGA hats or whatever. I'm not saying my comments previously are not just about MAGA. MAGA is one of the many groups that they target, but you want to target the extremist groups, right? The people that are most radical. So, you're talking about, poisoning the blood and all this craziness. Again, you do that because that's the most aggressive part of the base again, right? They will campaign for you, they will promote you, they will come out to vote for you. And additionally, it doesn't really matter ultimately who wins, because ultimately whoever it is that wins in the primary is gonna be able to shine in the general. Reason being, ultimately the Republican base, in my view, has been sufficiently fair-mongered to that it doesn't matter who wins in the primary, right? When the general election comes, the Republican base is not going to sit out elections unless the GOP betrays the thing that they're most focused on, right? So they definitely have demands for their politicians, which is why they get a lot of these, sort of virtue signaling bills passed. Culture war related, because if you don't deliver on those goods, the Republicans will actually stay home, the Republican voters, right? But as long as you're pandering to whatever culture war stuff, whoever it is that's in the general, they're gonna come out and vote for you, right? Um, Now, on the other hand, the Democrats can't use this strategy because their branding is they're the good guys. So obviously, some extremist type person in the primary is not really going to go far. And if you allow someone who's considered extremist, whether they are or not, to get into the primary, that'll be disastrous because their base is not going to really turn out for someone who is perceived as extreme. Now, the Republican base will do it, but the Democratic base will not. So I believe it is this because of this reality that the Democrats believe in essentially rigging the primary, right, to make sure that they get the right candidate into the general, which can get people out to vote. So in their view, and that's not the only consideration, right? Because you look at someone like Bernie Sanders, I don't think it's necessarily that they believe he wouldn't win in the general, but possibility of him actually winning in the general, I think, might be more the issue, right? Because a lot of what he's pushing is, in contrast to what the Dem establishment wants, right? So having him win gives power to the progressives who essentially are the enemies of the Democratic establishment. So you don't really want that guy to win. But other people who, may not necessarily, well, I think typically the way they would look at someone who is more quote unquote extreme, right? Someone who's more towards the left is they would look at them as, I guess it's two schools of thought, right? Either they are a threat to the establishment in terms of if this person wins, they're going to threaten what we're trying to do, or on the other hand, it is if this person wins in a primary, we're going to get slaughtered in the general, right? So that's the two concerns. The person, so electability is what we're talking about, right? So the person that gets into the general needs to have the perceived electability, per the establishment. Otherwise, if they have the electability, but they are perceived as a threat to the establishment, that can't happen either, right? So we don't want someone that's going to, actually have a chance to win in the general and then go against the establishment mission, which is really, in my view, to serve the donors, right? So if you have a good chance to win and you're a threat to the donor class, we can't allow you to get into the general because that's a problem. So we got to rig the primary so that you have no chance of making it to the general, so we can preserve our power, right? Otherwise, if we do not necessarily perceive you as a threat, but you're just too far left, right? Or too seen as too extreme. Your threat is if you make it to the general, the Democrats believe that they're going to lose the election because they don't believe that their base will turn out for someone who's perceived as an extremist. Unlike the Republicans who will turn out for an extremist, like it's pretty much like whatever you give the Republican base, they're going to turn out because again, you cannot let the Democrats win like that. That fear factor is compelling enough that someone pretty corrupt and someone pretty extreme can actually win in the Republican general election, in my view. But again, the same effect doesn't work on the Democrat side. So that's how I perceive the whole primary versus general in terms of the Democratic strategy versus the Republican strategy. Tell me your thoughts below. Let's continue. Right, and before we talk about election, let's talk about these people. Right, on the Republican side, you have Ron DeSantis, Crenshaw, MTG, Scalise, Jordan. On the Democrat side, you have AOC, Pelosi, Schiff, and Waters. Now, don't focus on these particular people. These are just some random names of people that I pulled from the parties that are in safe districts, right? And that's the key thing, safe. They're both safe, right? So if you want to be a careerist, these guys are good. They're going to make a lot of money for a long time, right? And what you need to understand is what really happens in the elections. In one election, the Republicans win. If Republicans win, that means Democrats lose. That's what people think. But how is this considered a loss? If the Republicans win an election, right? How does that affect AOC, Pelosi, Schiff, or Waters? They're still going to be making the same 180,000 plus. They're still going to be able to do the background deal and insider trading and whatever they do that leads them to be multi-millionaires. That's still going on. So why would AOC, Pelosi, Schiff, or Waters really care about whether they win or lose? I mean, ultimately, the one who cares the most will be the one at the top of the ticket, the president, right? But even the president, I mean, you have a maximum of 2 terms, right? And then once you've been president, you have this track of where you can make a lot of money in the private sector, doing your speeches and all this kind of stuff. So, I mean, yeah, it'd be nice to have 2 terms, but it's literally just 2 terms. So it's like either you do 2 terms or you do 1 term, but the bulk of your reward comes from after the presidency. So do you really care so much about whether you win or not? I mean, ego, yeah, I want to do 2 terms, but ultimately, don't you want to get into the private sector where you can do your own thing? You're not so constrained, and I think it's simpler and much more money. So really, you want to get through the presidency so you can get to that money afterwards. But these people, they're the ones who are in it for the long haul. right? Look at Pelosi, well past retirement, won't go away, right? We had another one in California just die, they want to die in office, right? Decades and decades. While you guys are struggling, worried about your career and all this kind of stuff, and, industries die, now you got to find some new thing. These folks, for decades and decades, making big money, right? Becoming multimillionaires and losing an election to the Republicans doesn't really affect these people, right? In fact, to me, it's beneficial because when the Democrats are in the minority, they can't really do much, right? So therefore, they have the perfect excuse to not really deliver, right? Ultimately, to me, they don't really plan on delivering much. They know they just do bare minimum, play this good guy thing, and in every election, it's kind of like, oh, you don't want those guys, and then they can win elections that way. But even when they lose, it's better, right? Because now the standard of like what you need to accomplish, it's even lower, right? When you're a minority, you can crank up the rhetoric, right? And then, I mean, it's not like you're actively cranking down on the legislation. You don't have as much power to do much, right? So you can, well, the Republicans are in charge. You got to vote for us so we can do stuff, right? You can play that game, right? And then on the right, it's the same thing, When Biden won the last election, how did that affect DeSantis, Crenshaw, MTG, Scalise, Jordan? They're still making 180,000 plus, tons of money, still on that, either they're multi-millionaires or they're on that track. They're good, man. And they have even more excuses for not delivering when they're in the minority. Like, oh, you got to vote for us. We need power. The Democrats are in power, and they're coming after your kids and whatever, right? That rhetoric. So ultimately, it doesn't really matter which party wins, right? Because these folks are safe. So what is the incentive of these folks to deliver for the American people? I mean, it's really, really zero, probably negative on this side. On this side, it's near zero, right? They got to deliver a little something because their branding is the good guys. So, we're the adults in the room. So they do need to deliver a little something to say like, we did the infrastructure bill, we did this, whatever. Right? They need something, right? Republicans don't have to do much, right? Their main thing is we're going to save you guys from these evil Democrats. As long as they, all the rhetoric and keep fear-mongering and, do some like virtue signaling bills, we're going to block whatever from the schools and protect the kids bill or whatever. They're good, right? Democrats, bare minimum, right? Because the message of we're the good guys and you don't want these guys in end democracy, right? And this works. This keeps people vote for the GOP presidency, Dem presidency, GOP presidency, Dem presidency. Win. They always win, right? All they do is win. They never lose, right? Because these guys are in safe districts and they don't have to worry about whether they're going to actually win or lose an election. So that is pretty much the breakdown of the duopoly and how it functions and kind of why things are the way they are, right? As long as this sort of scam continues, not really a lot of incentive for these guys or these guys to do much, right? The crazier Trump gets and talking about all this like Hitler stuff and of course, right-wingers are going to dismiss it like, oh, he's just saying that, he doesn't really mean it, blah, blah, blah. But it's helpful, right? Because this is stuff that Dems can latch on to, like, oh my goodness, look what they're doing, they're going to end democracy, right? And the Democrats doing the same thing, the GOP doing the same thing. I believe the GOP is more corrupt than the Democrats, but irrelevant, right? This model, right? This model is going to forever keep us sort of stuck. We'll make some progress here and there, but ultimately, there's going to be, really big limitations on progress in this country as long as this happens. This is a model where these guys always win, and ultimately, we always lose. That's pretty much how it works.